This is my character, Cheap Monksdale. Can you see the clever pun in that name? I wanted to name her Cheap Brawny Son at first. Or Chippendale Brawny Son, but unfortunately the game would not allow me to choose that name because it was apparently inappropriate. Go figure. Anyway, welcome to TERA Online!
Yeah, I have heard about this game.
Of course you have. It's the most anime MMO, not to be bad, that is, that exists. Now, one thing you might immediately notice is that this is not a Square Enix game. It doesn't have expensive full-motion video introductions that only a AAA company like Square Enix could afford. No, TERA Online pretty much was started by a small company. Called En Masse. And here we are! Here we are! After that cutscene, we are immediately thrown into the middle of something with enemies to kill. No initial town. No showing us getting there at any point. Just, here's your character, it's in a field. Kill some rodents.
Yay, straight to the good stuff!
Honestly, this alienated me pretty early. So you might have heard that TERA Online has a unique gimmick when it comes to its combat system. It's being compared to Devil May Cry, which is an absurd comparison, but nevertheless there is a much bigger focus on action and combo systems and all of that.
Yeah.
The problem is that said action-oriented gameplay with combos and all of that, all the good, cool gaming stuff, it's still presented with the typical presentation, so to speak, the typical gameplay presentation of an MMORPG, which means you have a hotbar down there.
Yeah, I can
You
do
have
that.
several commands assigned to every single key of your keyboard or your controller, and you're supposed to stack up combos from that. And in fairness, the system works. In fact, it's actually pretty good, although getting used to it might be a bit of a chore, especially since you cannot customize your hotkeys. Which is a shame, because Final Fantasy XIV allowed you to customize your hotkeys in order to formulate your own favored gameplay situation, but TERA Online is like, you play by my rules or you don't play at all.
Yeah. I had to admit, when you said the Devil May Cry comparison, I remember another online game that actually did try that Devil May Cry sort of style of gameplay. It was called Rusty Hearts.
I played that. No, wait! I played Elsword. That's what it was.
Elsword. Was that a side-scrolling one?
It was a side-scroller MMO, action RPG.
Yes, in the same vein as Maple Story, except it's a bit more action-packed.
Coming off of Final Fantasy XIV, which took, for better or for worse, great lengthy pains to make sure you know how to play it,
Yes.
and you are thrown into the midst of things and you have no idea what everything is or does, so you just learn as you go. So here I am accepting my first quest by this random guy in the middle of a field full of rats, and I have no context for anything that I am doing. There was technically that small cutscene at the beginning explaining what the general world is like, but I have no background for my own character. I am not coming here because I'm on a journey of self-discovery or I want to become the best pugilist in the world. I am just here. Why? How? No ideas. I wanted to see if Final Fantasy XIV was a good MMO other than a game that I enjoyed. And I have come to a very unique, balanced conclusion.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy XIV, a realm reborn in Alita, The Last Order,
Viva la Cala Loca.
and all of that, all of those titles. Fantasy XIV is a lot more polished as a game, because again, it had the Square Enix budget, the best programmers, and it runs smoothly, without constantly buffering if there are too many people in a given area. So in that sense, very polished game. TERA Online is extremely rough around the edges. It does constantly buffer whenever we are in an extremely populated area, and sometimes even an area without many players it buffers. It also doesn't have that budget, so the environment doesn't look particularly up to date. They are using the Unreal Engine, by the way. The character models are egregious, especially if you look their faces up close. My squirrel girl here, she has the most vacant facial expression I've ever seen, and all of the faces available for this particular fairy race, they were all vacant. Which is weird and bizarre.
I can only imagine.
Also, like I said, I cannot customize my hotbar keys, at least not the commands I wanted, which means that the basic combo attack is stuck with the R2 shoulder button on my controller.
Yeah.
Which is really counterintuitive. Speaking of counterintuitive, do you know what I have to do in order to jump? I have to access the secondary hotbar by pressing L1, and then I press X. And that's how I jump. I know, it's ridiculous.
It seems like a long-winded way.
The map up there is terrible, and oftentimes I don't know where the quest mark exactly is. I never had that problem with Final Fantasy XIV. Furthermore, I always have to manually open up the inventory and open up individual items in order to see which items I've gotten, and I don't know, it takes a second in Final Fantasy XIV, it takes 5 seconds in this one, which is a small difference, but doing it over and over and over again can become a tad annoying. And yet, in spite of all that, in spite of all the roughness and the edgy bits, so to speak, that are the inevitable consequence of this not being financed by Square Enix, or by Blizzard, because it is also buggy, I think overall TERA Online is a better MMORPG. A much more well-rounded MMORPG in spite of its crippling issues.
Right.
I mentioned how in our previous dissertation, well, mostly my dissertation of Final Fantasy XIV, I complained about the Disciple of the Ends ordeal, which basically is what you had to do in order to unlock the ability of crafting or improving armors. In fact, you had to take different classes in order to do crafting, in order to do weaving, and in order to augment your armors. In this game, you can just go to your menu and do those things. You don't have to take individual subclasses in order to do individual jobs that really should be all included into one class to begin with, if you want to be pedantic.
Yeah.
So you want to improve your weapons, you want to improve your armors, you want to place some gems of power in your weapons and armors, you want to craft materials, you just go to the menu, the option in the menu, and you do it! What a novel concept!
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, you just be able to do the thing you want to do without any strings attached.
Exactly. Those strings were especially pointless because any other MMORPG would just be smart enough to give you those abilities right off the bat. Instead, in Final Fantasy XIV, you want to make clothes, you have to become a weaver. You want to improve armors, you have to become an armorer or a blacksmith. You want to put materia in your weapons, you have to first become a Disciple of the End. And all of those elements, which are a huge chunk of the game, I end up ignoring entirely, so I am not playing that game at the fullest. I cannot say the same for TERA Online, which is, in some parts, a even more streamlined version of that other one. Also, I think the gameplay is actually a good idea. It's something that helped separate this game from the rest. Because, you know, stacking up combos and dodging enemies' attacks, that requires some amount of strategy.
Yeah, and reflexes.
Although it really becomes easy to overpower your enemies once you start liberally exploiting the crafting and improve your armor systems in this game. I sort of understand why Square Enix decided to make your life more difficult in that specific category. They did it specifically not to make their game easily exploitable, like TERA Online is. And believe you me, it is very exploitable in that sense. Really, I'm at that point in the game in which most of my moves are one-hit kills.
Oh, wow.
I maxed out all the weapons and armors I am wearing at the moment. Because you can do that very early on. In fact, you can get a lot of money very early on by doing simple hunting down quests. Available in every area you visit.
Do you want to play?
And look at me, I'm level 2 already.
Took you only about, what, 20 minutes to get there?
And only because I was trying to understand what in the world I was doing. So my class is the Slayer, which for practical reason essentially means I have a big sword. Oh, and by the way, the sword is too big for her small frame. Thank you, TERA Online, you get it. That's what I wanted off of my Lalafell Marauder, Square Enix. No, instead you want to be quote-unquote realistic, and you gave her an axe that actually fits her size. That's no fun. Give me a big axe, damn it!
Go get a giant axe.
Yes, that's a lot funnier.
It'd be so amusing if you gave me a giant axe at 10 times my height.
So, yes, you see this sword is about as big as she is, so that's funny, you know? To see
I do.
this small squirrel girl just weaving down enemies, knocking them off with that impractically big sword. I feel like guts, essentially. Except it's a little girl, and that's funny, and I guess that's the extent of my sense of humor.
Oh no, that's not good.
It amuses me to no end. I blame Shadow the Hedgehog for that.
What a thrill, with darkness and silence through the night. What a thrill. I'm searching and I'll melt into you. What a fear in my heart, but you're so supreme. I give my life, not for honor,